The moment my mother tossed two sleeping bags onto the floor and told my 6-year-old daughter that the guest room belonged to my sister's family, something inside me went completely still. You can sleep down here, Mom said, pointing toward the cold living room floor as if she were assigning seats at a restaurant. My daughter Emma looked up at me with sleepy, confused eyes. Mommy, did we do something wrong? Behind us, my sister Rachel laughed softly while carrying her overnight bag toward the guest room. Her husband followed with their two children. They had barely arrived, yet somehow their comfort had already become more important than mine. I looked at my mother, waiting for even a hint of regret. There was none. Instead, she smiled and said, Rachel has 3 children. You only have one. I stared at the sleeping bags in my hands and realized that this wasn't about beds. It was about how little my place in my own family had been valued for years. I had driven nearly 6 hours to Mom's house because she had insisted we come for the weekend. She said she missed Emma and wanted all of us together again. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. I packed Emma's favorite pajamas, her stuffed rabbit, a few books, and the small blanket my late father had given her when she was 3. I had imagined sitting around the kitchen table with Mom, drinking tea, listening to old stories, and watching Emma laugh with her cousins. Instead, the first thing Rachel said when we arrived was, Oh, good, you made it. We were worried there wouldn't be enough room. I laughed because I assumed she was joking. She wasn't. By dinner, it became obvious that Mom had prepared everything for Rachel's family. Their favorite meals were on the table. Their children had new towels waiting upstairs. Even the guest room had been decorated with fresh flowers. Emma and I had been invited, but we had never really been included. After dinner, Rachel casually announced that she and her family would be staying in the guest room. I assumed that meant Emma and I would take Mom's spare bedroom, the small room at the end of the hallway where I had slept countless times as a child. But Mom stopped me before I could open the door. That's for Rachel's kids, she said. They're little. I stared at her. Mom, Emma is 6. Mom shrugged. She's old enough to understand. Then she pulled two sleeping bags from the hall closet and dropped them onto the floor. One landed near the coffee table. The other landed beside it. There, she said. Problem solved. Emma looked at the sleeping bag and then at me. Her lower lip trembled. Mommy, are we sleeping here? Before I could answer, Rachel walked past us and said, You should have booked a hotel if you wanted a proper bed. She laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Nobody else corrected her. I crouched beside Emma and forced a smile. We're okay, sweetheart. But she whispered, Why do they get the bedroom? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break her heart. I tucked her hair behind her ear and told her we'd make a little camping adventure out of it. She tried to smile. Later, while she brushed her teeth in the downstairs bathroom, I heard Rachel talking to Mom upstairs. She always makes everything dramatic, Rachel said. Mom replied, That's just how she is. I stood at the bottom of the stairs completely silent. I had spent years making excuses for them. When Rachel needed money, I helped. When Mom needed someone to handle appointments, bills, or paperwork, I did it. When Rachel's children needed school supplies, I bought them. When Mom's roof needed repairs last winter, I paid the contractor because she said she couldn't manage the expense. I never kept score, I never expected praise. But standing there that night, I suddenly realized something painful. They had kept score. They simply counted everything I gave as something they were entitled to receive. At 11 that night, Emma was finally asleep. I sat beside her on the floor and watched the blue light from the television flicker across her face. My phone buzzed with a message from the financial advisor I had been working with for the past month. It was a simple confirmation. The cancellation has been processed. I stared at those words for a long time. Nobody in my family knew what I had been arranging. For years, I had quietly paid several of Mom's recurring expenses. I had covered her home insurance when she was short. I had paid for a maintenance contract on the house. I had also been transferring money into an account that Mom believed was available for family emergencies. She had never asked where the money came from because she assumed it would always be there. But after what happened that night, I knew I couldn't keep financing a family that couldn't even give my child a safe place to sleep. The next morning, Mom acted as if nothing had happened. She served pancakes and asked Emma whether she had slept well. Emma looked at me before answering. My back hurts. Mom laughed. Oh, children are resilient. Rachel walked into the kitchen wearing a robe and carrying her coffee. Did you two survive your camping trip? She joked. Emma didn't answer. I looked at my daughter and felt something shift inside me. I could tolerate being disrespected. I could tolerate being overlooked. But I could not teach my daughter that love meant accepting humiliation just because the people doing it shared your last name. I told Mom we would leave after breakfast. She frowned. Don't be ridiculous. You drove all this way, calmly replied. I know. She had no idea that I wasn't talking about the 6 hour drive. I was talking about every mile I had traveled toward a family relationship that had never been equal. We packed our bags while everyone else was still upstairs. Emma carefully folded the little blanket my father had given her. Are we going home? She asked. Yes, I said, and we're going somewhere nice first. I took her to a small hotel near the lake. We ordered room service, watched cartoons under a pile of blankets, and ate chocolate cake in bed. For the first time that weekend, my daughter smiled without looking over her shoulder. That night, she hugged me and whispered, I like this room. I kissed her forehead. Me too. She fell asleep within minutes. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things I had quietly paid for over the years. Not because I regretted helping my mother. I regretted helping people who had mistaken my kindness for an unlimited resource. On Monday morning, I made one final phone call. I canceled the automatic payments connected to my mother's household expenses. I ended the maintenance plan I had been paying for. I removed myself from the emergency account. I also called the company handling the family phone plan and transferred my line into my own account. There was no angry email, no dramatic announcement, no social media post. I simply ended everything that I had been quietly carrying. I didn't tell mom because I didn't want a fight. I didn't tell Rachel because I didn't owe her an explanation. I wanted my actions to speak for themselves. Then I opened a new savings account for Emma's future and transferred the money I had once been setting aside for family emergencies into it. For the first time in years, I felt strangely peaceful. 3 days after we left, my phone began ringing. Mom called twice, then 5 times, then 12. I didn't answer. Rachel started calling too. Then came the messages. Why isn't the insurance payment going through? The maintenance company says the contract was cancelled. Mom's phone bill is due. What did you do? I read every message without responding. I wasn't trying to punish them. I was simply refusing to rescue them from a problem they had created by assuming someone else would always handle it. By the afternoon, I had 27 missed calls. By evening, there were 51. The next morning, the number reached 98. Mom finally left a voicemail. Her voice sounded frightened. Honey, please call me. Something's wrong with the account. The bank says the money isn't there. I listened twice. Then I heard Rachel shouting in the background. She did this on purpose. I closed my eyes. She was right. I had done it on purpose, but I hadn't done it because of the sleeping bags. That was merely the moment that opened my eyes. I had spent years allowing everyone to depend on me while pretending it didn't hurt. I had convinced myself that being needed was the same thing as being loved. Now I understood the difference. People who love you don't make you prove your worth by constantly sacrificing yourself. That evening, Mom finally came to my house. She stood on my porch with red eyes and a folder of unpaid bills. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. I looked at her calmly. Tell you what? She held up the papers. That you were stopping everything. I nodded. Would it have changed anything? She opened her mouth but couldn't answer. I invited her inside. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table. Mom looked at her and whispered, I'm sorry about what happened. Emma looked up. It's okay, Grandma. Then she went back to her homework. I could see the shame on Mom's face. But I wasn't interested in making her feel worse. I simply told her, I was willing to help you. I wasn't willing to teach my daughter that she should accept being treated as less important. Mom sat down slowly. For the first time in years, she didn't argue. She admitted that she had always seen Rachel as the child who needed more protection. Rachel had struggled financially, and Mom had convinced herself that helping her was her responsibility. But somewhere along the way, that protection had turned into favoritism. She confessed that she assumed I could handle everything because I always had. You never complained, she said. I almost laughed. Mom, I complained. You just never listened. She looked down at her hands. Then she asked the question I had been expecting. Can you start paying the bills again? I shook my head. No, her face fell. Not even a little. I can help you make a budget. I can help you find assistance programs. I can help you understand your options. But I won't secretly carry your expenses anymore. Rachel called me that night and accused me of destroying the family. She said I had humiliated mom. She said I was selfish. She said Emma would grow up without a proper relationship with her grandmother because of me. I let her finish. Then I said, Rachel, I didn't destroy anything. I stopped holding it together. There was silence on the phone. I continued. You told me to book a hotel. I did. You just didn't realize I was also booking a future where my daughter wouldn't have to beg for a place at the table. Rachel hung up. I didn't call back. That was the last time I allowed myself to feel guilty for protecting my child. Months passed. Mom learned how to manage her own expenses. Rachel stopped expecting me to pay for things. Our family didn't magically become perfect. Some relationships became distant, others became honest. Mom eventually apologized to Emma in person. She brought her a new sleeping bag and said, this one is for adventures, not because you don't have a bed. Emma hugged her. I watched them from across the room, grateful that my daughter was old enough to remember the apology but young enough not to carry the resentment. As for me, I kept the money I had once spent rescuing everyone else. I used some of it to start an education fund for Emma. I also took her on little weekend trips. We stayed in hotels, cabins, and once even a tiny beach cottage. Every time we checked into a new place, Emma would jump on the bed and shout, this one is ours. A year after that weekend, I found the two old sleeping bags in the back of my closet. I almost threw them away. Instead, I gave them to a local family shelter. As I watched the donation disappear through the doorway, I realized how much had changed. My mother had once believed that giving me the floor would cost her nothing. She was wrong. She lost the version of me who would quietly sacrifice anything to keep everyone comfortable. But she didn't lose her daughter. She gained a daughter who finally understood that boundaries aren't cruelty and saying no isn't betrayal. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can quietly end isn't a payment, a favor, or an account. It's the belief that you have to earn your family's love by suffering for it. And the day I stopped believing that was the day my daughter finally learned something I wish I'd understood years earlier. You never have to sleep on the floor just to prove you belong in the family.